Yeah, and Kayla, meanwhile, what can we expect today from the big event featuring President Biden and the vice president?
Yeah, well, this is the first time we're seeing these two together on a stage ever since Kamala Harris announced her intention to seek the nomination. We did see them at that campaign headquarters the day after that announcement. He was by phone, of course, because he had COVID. But I do think the location of this event is very telling. They will be in Maryland and Prince George's County, a very blue county, a majority black county, and frankly, not a county that Harris or Biden really had to worry about. And I think that really shows she does have a risk here in tying herself too closely to Biden when it comes to the economy. They'll be talking about lowering prescription drug prices, something that was very popular as a policy, but not necessarily overall with the economy when it was tied to Biden. So I'm really interested to see how closely she's going to associate herself with her time in the administration. She has talked about Biden's policy, but she has also been very careful about talking about her time in the Senate, talking about her time as Attorney General, going after for-profit colleges and Wall Street banks. So I'm very interested to see how she's going to strike that balance, because so far she's really been able to detach herself from some of those low perspectives and low sentiments about Biden's handling of the economy and really given voters hope. There was this Financial Times poll that showed that more voters trusted her than Trump to handle the economy, which is something we really haven't seen for decades when it comes to a Democratic presidential nominee.
Yeah, and you were just mentioning this. This comes on the heels of that major announcement expected on the lowering of costs of some of the most widely used drugs for seniors.
Absolutely. And that's what they're going to be talking about today. Those 10 drugs that have now, we will reveal those prices. And that is something that Biden worked on. And again, these are things that Harris is talking about on the campaign trail because they are popular. But the change now is the messenger. Voters seem to be more hopeful now that it's Harris and giving her sort of the benefit of the doubt. They know that she was Biden's governing partner, but they also recognize that she was the vice president and not necessarily calling the shots.
And Vaughn, meanwhile, overnight, more controversial statements about women kept emerging, about J.D. Vance's past. What did he have to say there?
Right. This kind of all comes down to the fact that J.D. Vance is still very much of a political novice, if you will, only having served in the U.S. Senate for a year and a half. And some of his old past comments on abortion and family matters are coming to light here. I don't want to let you listen to part of his remarks on a podcast in 2020 in which there was a host who was asking him about his own family dynamics and his view on them. Take a listen.
They spoil him. There's sort of all the classic stuff that grandparents do to grandchildren. But it makes him a much better human being to have exposure to his grandparents.
Well, I don't know.
And the evidence on this, by the way, is like super clear.
That's the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female in theory. When your child was born, did your in-laws, and particularly your mother-in-law, show up in some huge way?
She lived with us for a year.
Right.
So,
So I didn't know the answer to that.
Right. No.
Because that's this weird unadvertised feature of marrying an Indian woman.
I want to read a part of a statement from the spokesman for Vance responding to that audio that has come out from 2020, in which the spokesman says in part, quote, "The media is dishonestly putting words in JD's mouth. Of course, he does not agree with what the host said." Goes on to say JD was complimenting the selflessness of his mother-in-law for being willing to help care for her grandchildren. Millions of grandparents across our country do the same every day. We also now know that J.D. Vance and Tim Walz appear as if they will be appearing on a VP debate stage on October 1st, Jose.
Yeah, and Tara, I mean, Hillary Clinton took those comments and tweeted a short time ago, "Childless cat ladies, postmenopausal females. Is the Republican ticket aware that women can vote?" How much damage do you think is this having?
Well, it's not what I think. It's what the polls are showing already. I mean, obviously, this is damaging. And Kamala Harris is pulling ahead of Donald Trump in swing states like Pennsylvania. We saw the Quinnipiac poll come out this week that showed that she's leading Trump not only 50-47 with likely voters, but with women, 55% to 41% over Donald Trump. Women do not like being constantly insulted about their intelligence, about their looks, about their fertility, about their roles in society. Women are sick and tired of this, and they won't go back. that is part of Kamala Harris's campaign slogan, and it's resonating. And when you have a presidential ticket that demonstrates this level of constant misogyny, it's going to upset women voters. Women make up the largest propensity of voters in this country, and we are the largest population. So it's not a good way to start off your candidacy with multiple insults against women coming from your vice presidential candidate. And we already know Donald Trump's litany of insults and problems with women, also that he's been an adjudicated rapist and had to pay E. Jean Carroll a couple $100 million in defamation. So this combination here, this gender gap that we're seeing develop in this election, is going to be significant, particularly in those battleground states where women are more motivated than ever. And you also have abortion initiatives on the ballot in states like Arizona. Florida now is possibly in play. Nevada, there are 8 states that have abortion initiatives on the ballot, and women are coming out in droves, and it's across party lines. This spells trouble for Trump.
And Basil, meanwhile, J.D. Vance announced just a short time ago that he has agreed to debate Tim Walz on October the 1st on CBS. Vance is also calling for a second debate on the 18th of September. What do you make of this back and forth? It seems as though both of these candidates are looking forward to a debate.
They're both looking forward to the debate for probably different reasons, in the sense that, J.D. Vance wants to continue to make his case, but also carry the water for Donald Trump in the ways that, we've been talking about and that Tara sort of outlined, the kind of narrative and rhetoric that is both bullying when you think about the ways that Donald Trump sort of approaches his campaign, but also in the way that he talks down to and is very patronizing with respect to women and the sovereignty that women have over their own bodies. Whereas Tim Walz is going to bring a very different tactic. I always say that he often demonstrates his background both as a teacher and a coach, and that he has this great ability to condense and distill very complex issues into a way that's relatable to voters. And he also is very motivating, as a coach would be, to get out and tell voters that you may want to still support us and vote for us, but you still have to have a plan, that it's not enough to just have hope, which he talked about at the union rally the other day. And so I think that the style favors Walz in that debate. And I think he's looking forward to bringing that difference, that split screen, to the public, to be able to, make that clear, so the voters going to make that clear choice and distinction.